All right, what is up, y'all? Welcome to a Whiteboard Wednesday video where today we're going to be tackling a topic that one of my students was actually asked. Now, they solved this in what's called a code golf challenge, which is can you solve this question with as few lines of code as possible and as optimized as possible. We're going to throw that right out the window and just talk about can we solve it however we possibly can. Let's not talk about efficiency and optimization. Can we solve it just using some of the skills we've built together in these Whiteboard Wednesday videos with our various types of array manipulation? And so the goal of today's Whiteboard Wednesday video, or the question rather, is phone number formatter. If we are given an array of numbers of various lengths, can we determine the length of that number and format it to the proper telephone number format? This will make the assumption that these array of numbers can't and won't have any leading zeros, because you can't have integers leading with the number 0 in JavaScript, at least not easily, and we don't have to worry about a +0 international code. So we're going to assume that's not going to be a case we have to worry about. So here we go. Something we're going to need to know if you guys have never encountered it. We're going to be using something called .splice and .slice as array methods. I've talked about array manipulation in previous Whiteboard Wednesday videos. These two I haven't quite touched upon yet, but they're similar but different in the sense that splice is a method that returns any removed items in an array, and slice will return the selected elements in an array as a new array. So what this means is, like slice, we can select chunks of our array to set aside for usage if we wanted to, and splice, we can insert things into the array potentially, such as hyphens and parentheses and stuff like that for our formatted numbers up there. So that's cool. And what's interesting about splice is that splice changes the original array and slice doesn't change the original array. So that's a distinction to keep in mind. And splice can take a number of arguments, whereas slice only takes 2 arguments. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and jump on into our code here. And I have just some dummy data ready to go, as I usually do, that I have commented out just so I could talk a little bit before we started going down the rabbit hole here. Here is our array of numbers of various lengths that we have to format. I'm assuming that our number parser function will take this array of numbers and return an array of formatted numbers instead. So I loop through the formatted array once it's generated, and I'm going to console log each element out of the formatted number array. So that's what we're going with here, and let us kind of start diving in as always. Number parser is a function that takes the array of numbers as its argument, and that's it. We're going to be taking advantage of looping through this guy, and we're going to be doing so using a .map method, which, if you're not familiar, is just like a for each method, is nothing more than your traditional for loop, except not only does it loop through an array, it also can return a new array. So we can look at each element in our input array of data and return a new array with each element being formatted, with each number being formatted to the telephone number we were looking for. So here, let's go ahead and call it maybe const parsed is going to be returned from our array.map. And while we're over here, I'm going to go ahead and just return parsed before I forget to do it, like I sometimes do in the Whiteboard Wednesday videos that cause me to have to splice in scenes or re-record stuff. I'm going to return the parsed array, which should be stored into formatted and then logged to the console once we actually get something going here. So inside of array.map, we're going to have our callback function in here with our argument, which we're going to call for each individual number. That makes sense to me as a name. Again, this is just an arbitrary callback argument in our function that represents symbolically each element in the original data array. Cool. So we're going to have to set up a set of if-else statements, and if you want to do this with switches, you can make specific cases. I'm going to be using an if-else statement here, and our most specific case is going to be when they have international numbers. Those are going to be very unique, and we're going to catch those first. So if the phone number length is greater than 10 digits, we have the international format syntax we're looking for, which would look something like plus XX or plus singular X, doesn't matter, then some kind of local area code, and then the traditional number format. So the number of X's would be 1, 2, 3. So you get your 7 right here, your 7 base phone numbers, your 3 area code numbers, aka 10 digits in a number. So if the length of this phone number, and I just realized it should be, I know what I forgot. So I kind of jumped the gun here where I already assumed I have a phone ready to go. What is phone? Right now it's going to be a converted number. So let's actually talk about that real quick before I get too far ahead of myself here, y'all. So const phone is going to be our number converted to a string with our number, right? This number, again, represents each one of these numbers in this array. We're going to convert it to a string, so therefore we can run our classic .split on it. Boom. So now, if I comment this code out and possibly return this number, so let's check it out what it does here. If I return that from my array map and console log it, we get all of the input numbers now split into various arrays here around my head and chair. That's the goal. So we're taking the numbers, convert them to strings, split them into arrays. Now we can manipulate the crap out of these arrays and call it a day. That's the goal. So now that I have some array, and we're going to call it phone, because that's what it's going to be, our phone array, if you want to call it that. Now my if-else statement actually makes a bit more sense, where if the length of this phone number is greater than 10, that means it's definitely going to include some international codes. As we discussed, that there's the base phone number, the area code, and then anything else would be our international code. That way, if it's greater than 10, it should follow this or something like its format. Otherwise, we can set up an else if chain here, where we have the case where the phone is equal to exactly 10. If it's equal to exactly 10, our format would look like an area code, 3, 6, and then 4 more to get 10. And that's what our 10-digit phone number length would look like. That's what it should look like outputted, formatted-wise. We have one more case where if the phone.length is equal to 7, we have just a simple 123-1234 style number. And then just for some safety, we can say otherwise. We're going to return invalid number type fool or something like that. You know, classic little error handling right here. Fun stuff. So we got our cases set up. We have our styles of digits set up now. We're actually going to start breaking them apart. And we're going to be using, just like before, our splice and slice methods I was talking about. And remember, we are inside of a loop. So this is a check ran for each individual number going through this loop. What's the length of this? Then what's the length of this? What's the length of this? Once that's determined, format it in the way we need it formatted. So let's start with the simplest one. Our phone.length equals 7. And for testing purposes, I'm just going to do some return with some blank strings up in this if-else statement here. That way I can actually potentially demo some code to make sure we're working our way up the chain and it's working. So this is actually so I can demo some code. Okay. The easiest thing to do is if we have the number, which the number would look like that. That's what our input phone looks like here, and that's our desired output. So all we have to do, as you can tell, is find the 1, 0, 1, 2, third position, and I don't know, splice in a hyphen into the array. Should be good to go, right? That's our goal. All we got to do is splice in a hyphen at that third index position. And we can do that with our good old buddy, .splice. Like I said, it modifies the original array, which is the phone number. So I can say phone.splice, and it can take a number of arguments like I had mentioned. The first one being, where is this splicing occurring? Where do you want to insert or override something? Because splice can actually override a chunk of your array. It can override one value in your array. But we're trying to insert specifically something into an array, like stuff in a crowbar, separate it, and put it in our item right there is our goal. So we had mentioned kind of a 0, 1, 2, 3. The third index position is where that hyphen should go. So the third index position of that original array. And the second argument in this instance was, are we going to be deleting anything? No, so 0 deletions. I don't want to override anything in my original array. I want to insert something new. And the other argument and the final one can be, what are you inserting? What element are you inserting? It's going to be a hyphen. Booyah. Let's go. So remember this, I mentioned that .splice does modify the original array. So I don't care for returning or capturing whatever this returns. I just want it to modify the original phone array. So all I need to do from there is return the modified phone array and join it back together as a string, which you see me do in a number of our string-oriented Whiteboard Wednesday videos. So if I save this file, hopefully we at least get one number that's correctly parsed, and we do! The input of 9875432 gets properly formatted with a hyphen in between the leading 3 and trailing 4 digits. So we already know we got that case set up for us, and it's good to go, y'all. Nice. Just for sake of cleanliness, I'm going to collapse these guys in VS Code just so we can kind of focus on one case at a time. Since we know that one's working, we're going to kind of work our way upwards. Now I'm going to start with this one before I get to the international array of phone number style. So let's go ahead and begin discussing what we need to do here. It is going to do something very similar. It's still going to insert the hyphen at some point in time, and it's still going to honestly just splice in some parentheses around the first set of 3 numbers. So all we need to do is take our formatted phone number array and splice in a leading parentheses. So the leading parentheses will be the very beginning position of the array, aka index position 0. We're not removing or deleting anything, and all we're inserting is a hard-coded opening parentheses, right? Okay, well, guess what? It's going to be pretty much the exact same syntax all the way down. So we're going to say now at the old third position, so remember, this modified the original array, which we have to account for this now being index position 0. So it'd be index position 0, 1, 2, 3. At the 4th spot, I want to have a trailing parentheses. So we're going to do 4, 0, and close that parentheses right there. So now theoretically we have this part set up. Right after this position, I'm going to go ahead and insert a blank space. So I will say, okay, after that closing parentheses, we can do one of these. Just insert a blank space into this. Insert a space as an element into the array. Then all we need to do is count from that blank space to find where we need to insert our hyphen, which would be, if the blank space is 6, 7, 8, if it was 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 would be the hyphen position. So 9, 0, and our hyphen just like before. So now that that phone array is modified, all I need to do is call just like before, I believe return phone dot join, right? So we take that array and join it back into a flat string. So now if I save this file and run the code again, boom, we get our 2 length 10 phone numbers formatted to have this nice area code in parentheses, space, and then trailing digits, including our buddy 8675309, Jenny's number. All right, so I'm going to collapse that guy, and we're actually going to be doing something very similar to here. So I'm going to leave it uncollapsed for now, then I think about it, because we're going to be kind of we're going to be cannibalizing some of this code right up in here. So there's an extra step for this international phone style number that I need to account for, and that is I need to grab my last 10 digits and do this code again, right? If I have 10 digits, this is what it's supposed to do. And then I need to grab any leading digits that aren't those 10 trailing digits and convert them to be this plus international phone code number. Remember I mentioned we can now use something called slice. And slice doesn't modify the original array. It returns a new array of our selected elements. So I'm going to select the leading numbers and call it international. So we can say const international, INTL. I'm going to forget that and typo it somewhere. I know I am. Phone.slice this time. And slice will take 2 arguments. What is our selection? Well, start at the beginning of the array, position 0, and go to position phone.length minus 10. Because I mentioned we want to go to the length of the phone minus those 10 digits. So we can say, okay, yeah, anything not highlighted by my cursor here means it should be the international number. And that's what it should be returning for us. Similarly, I can take and select the back 10 and say const maybe base is equal to phone.slice, and we're going to start at position international dot length, so however long the international digits are, and we're going to go to the end of the array, aka the length of the phone number, right? The length of the original phone number. So starting at wherever internationals were, go to the end of the phone number. That's what that does for us. And now we have our international we can format, our base number we can format, and we'll be good to go. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just copy and paste all this stuff here because it should be the exact same thing, right? It should be, rather than phone.splice, I'm going to change all these to base.splice. So now theoretically this chunk of code is doing the exact same thing this guy is, which we know it converts and formats a number of 10 digits. So hopefully our base number is correctly formatted now. We need to do 2 extra steps on our international number though. first off, we need to add a leading plus sign, which we now know is very easy. So take the international array and splice in at the leading position a plus sign. Boom. And then one more thing we need to do is add a trailing space to that guy right there. So we're going to say international number array splice in at the end of your length. So international.length at the end of your array length. Don't delete or replace anything, and add an additional space, right? So theoretically, we have added our leading plus sign, and we've also added our trailing space to the international number. So now I have two arrays, hopefully correctly modified in memory. All I need to do is mash them together. So to do that, we can do it in a one-line return here, where I can say, okay, we're going to return our international array concatenated with, like cram them together, with our base array. So theoretically, I've recreated the formatted array phone number, and that array needs to be joined back into a string, and we should be good to go. So that concat method will take the array to the left of the dot and smash together on the right side being the base. So the international formatted array, merge it together with the ending of the base formatted array. Join that array back into a string, save and run the file, and there we go. Our data down here is correctly being formatted into this console log over here. And we got it. So I thought this was a really cool question. It utilized a lot of array manipulation, which we have extensively gone over, manipulating strings into arrays and back and forth in our previous Whiteboard Wednesday videos. And I thought it was really cool to cover an actual question that someone was asked. I'm going to snag their solution and put it in a code sandbox. I'm going to take this code solution, put it in a code sandbox. I'm going to link it in the description of this video. I hope you all had a blast talking about this one and learned something new about slice and splice if you didn't know the difference between the two. Learned something about map and concat. I'll have links to the MDN docs for those as well. Hope you all had fun formatting these numbers with me today. And if you have any follow-up questions, let me know. As always, leave questions and comments below or in our Discord community, and I'll be happy to help and make y'all some custom content. Later.